Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with more NBA news. And of course, the Washington Wizards selected AJ Debansa with number one pick in the NBA draft this year. But the question is, did they make the right choice? And it's one of those questions that you pretty much won't know the answer to until maybe 5, 10, 15 years down the road, because you have to see how everybody else turns out. And it's one of those tricky things where you know a player's talent, but you don't know their work ethic or how they fit with your team. So it's a very difficult question for most to figure out. But in the grand scheme of things, uh, people have projections, people have assumptions, and people have educated guesses for the most part. So when you think about the NBA or NFL or any league, you're drafting off potential of what they did in college, what they did in high school, they've done in their mindset and everything in totality, essentially, like their work ethic, how willing they are to go for their team. It's a bunch of different variables and factors that people have to consider. But I think most people thought at the beginning, towards the beginning of the season, that Darren Peterson would be a consensus number one because of his skill set. He can shoot the three. He's very effective at shooting the basketball. There's nothing he can do on a basketball court offensively. He can, he can dunk on people. He can pull up from the mid range. He can make free throws. He's very electric. Um, but he's more of a quiet and reserved player. I mean, same thing as AJ. He's pretty much quiet and reserved. He's not a boisterous player or has this huge personality for most that comes off to most people. So they both have kind of the same mentality. But the thing about Darren Peterson, of course, was the motor and the injury history. Because most people question if he was really injured. Most people question if he even had a motor to play. A lot of people were comparing him, even me, to Kawhi Leonard, because uh, they have the ability to score 30 points a night, but are they going to play that night? That's a big question, and that's a big concern for most organizations. And I think that's partial of the reason why AJ didn't go to Washington Darren Peterson didn't go to Washington number one is because of those concerns. Because if you're going to be number one overall pick, those concerns don't can't be there. I mean, I know the exception of like a Joel Embiid, but he was really injured a lot in college, and he ended up being injured a lot in the pros. So a lot of that follows you, and a lot of those owners and coaches and stuff believe if you're injured in college and high school, you're going to be injured in the pros because the game speed is better. They're more physical, bigger players. So you're going to put yourself in even more risk. But it's a tricky situation for AJ and Darren because what does history tell us about this situation? Because usually the bigger players get drafted over the smaller players, even despite injury history. Um, when you look at a Sam Bowie being drafted over Jordan, Sam Bowie had injury history. They still draft him over Jordan, which changed Portland forever. And then Portland did it again because they drafted Greg Oden over Kevin Durant. And Greg Oden had a little bit of an injury history and he was perpetually injured in the NBA and didn't have a career. So it's difficult unless you go back to the 96 draft where you have an Allen Iverson who's 6 foot drafted over Marcus Camby, who was essentially a 7 footer. But it's rare that you have those situations, especially back in the day where they're picking smaller players over the bigger players. Because they even told Portland when they were drafting Sam Bowie, they said, well, we can't draft Jordan because we need a center. The recruit guy said, just put Jordan at center because you'll figure it out from there. But it changed their history forever, and they did it twice. And they picked Greg Oden over Kevin Durant. But this situation is a little bit different because the smaller player has the injury history, while AJ doesn't really have that history, knock on wood. Um, but it's kind of difficult because, like I said before, in 5 or 10 or 15 years, if Darren Peterson turns out to be the better player, that will change the history forever for Washington. Because Washington right now, you have Trae Young, and then you have Anthony Davis for now, and then you have that number one pick that you had from a couple of years ago. So if you go back and you would have put, Trae Young with a Darren Peterson, no telling what your team could be right now. But you don't have that. So it's one of those things where we won't know if they made the right pick to down the road because did Washington just put themselves in a Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan situation, or did they put themselves in, just a typical situation where the bigger players drafted, i.e., a Shaq or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and that player turns out to be better than a smaller player? That's just something that they'll have to figure out in the next 5 years because I do think Peterson, with his skill set, he can be a Kobe type player. He can be a T Mac type player. He just has that ability. When I used to root against KU, he was always making shots, and anytime you left him open or anytime he had a good look, it's a good chance that shot was going in. So it's one of those very difficult situations because I think AJ is a good player, but I don't think he's the effective or more efficient than Darren Peterson is. He's one of those players that is just a big player, but I don't think he's a very good rebounder. He's a good rebound, but not a great one. Uh, I don't expect him to average like double digits or anything in a couple of years. I think it'll take some time for him to develop to that. But at the same time, I don't think Utah might not be a good fit for Darren Peterson, especially with the lack of talent that they have on that team. And then they have a lot of pieces like Laurie Marketing that might be going out. Um, that organization has been a mess since Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert left. So that team has been in shambles. But could Darren Peterson break through and be an exceptional piece for them? Could he be the next Donovan Mitchell for them at least? Uh, could he be the next John Stockton for them? It's a lot of questions to ask, but it's a lot to put on a rookie's plate, especially with not a lot of talent and not a lot of organizational success in the last 5 years. So that team needs a lot. And then the same thing with AJ. He has a lot to deal with, but you do have a Trey Young there. You do have an Anthony Davis there for now. And then you have the number one draft pick guy that was there from a couple of years ago. So hopefully he develops. So this was a tough draft for everyone, especially in those top 5 to 10 picks, because a lot of these players are one and done, so you don't really have a lot of footage on them or film, or you would have to go back to high school to get 2 years of film on most of those guys. So it's very difficult, unlike the WNBA where you have a lot of footage and film and you're able to see mindsets and stuff like that, but you don't see that much in the NBA. So that's what makes their draft so difficult. But tell me, do you think AJ was the better pick in the draft? And until next time, I'll see you next time.